All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and thank you for joining us for another edition of Spring Office Hours. My name is Dan Vega, and with me, as always, is my good friend, DaShaun. DaShaun, how are you doing?
I'm wonderful. I'm wonderful. We have a new view of both of us, actually, today. I don't think I normally see the back of your laptop, your stickerless laptop.
Yes,
and
clean.
Yeah, and I've got some stuff going on. It's a whole new view. Like for the end of the year, we're changing it up.
You stole my thunder. I was just going to comment and congratulate you. Your view here is looking great. Your setup is, as always, we're just always trying to improve this a little bit at a time. So it looks great.
You set a high bar.
Congrats. And I'm looking a little clean. I got a nice little haircut for the holidays today.
I didn't get the haircut that I wanted to get this morning. I was chasing down some issues, and I didn't get time. So the kids had a half day, so had to race around a little bit, and but it's the last one of the year.
Yeah, last show of the year. We have. I just realized that I didn't have my headphones in. Crazy. We have a really big episode today for the last episode of the year. We have a special guest with us we'll get to in just a few minutes. So I figured we'd start off by saying, hey, as always, get your questions in. If you have questions that you'd like us to answer, that's what we're here for. So go ahead and ask those questions away. If we can't get to them, we have somebody very, very smart with us who can answer questions not only on Spring Cloud Data Flow, but on everything Spring. Get those questions in and we'll see if we can't get them answered.
Awesome. It's good to see some of the regulars back. That's always fun. Hello from Colombia and Uganda. Amazing. The reach has just been super fun.
Yep.
So welcome
back. I was just thinking of the last couple of shows that we've done. We've done on our workshop coming up in January on getting started with Spring. We should really ask Glenn about our agenda and see what his thoughts are on it.
That would probably be a good
idea. He's done a couple talks here and there on getting started with Spring, so he's definitely a good person to throw that stuff by. So maybe we'll see if he can take a look at it for us.
That is a great idea.
All right, so before we bring Glenn on, just want to go ahead and normal cadence of the show is we kind of get started with what's new in the Spring community. So we'll take a look at the calendar real quick. So this is, again, our last show of the year, and it's good because everything is blank next week. So this week we have a bunch of things coming out or that have already come out. So a bunch of Spring security changes yesterday. Spring security, 5.6.10, 5.7, 5.8, and 6.0.1. Today, I will kind of show a blog article on this, but Spring for GraphQL 1.1.1 was released. So some really interesting things in 1.1 and 1.1.1. These are the changes for Spring Boot 3. So really excited to see that. I have some content coming up in the new year on some of the new things in Spring for GraphQL, so stay tuned for that. Spring integration changes today. I like the Spring integration with AWS as well, so that's pretty cool. Spring Kafka. And then, of course, later this week, two big releases for Spring Boot, 2.7.7 and Spring Boot 3.0.1, which includes the changes that we saw last week from Spring Framework 6.0.3. So those are kind of the last big releases of the year. I saw a question there. Did you?
Yeah, I did. It was about upgrading from 2.7 to 3.0.
Cool. There is some documentation. Let's
the migrator.
It is it is in migrator. I don't know where it is. I do know I put it in my newsletter. So let me just go there because I know I have a link in here.
Justin Hopper, welcome to the show. Stay tuned. You'll recognize our special guest.
So there is this guide. So the Spring Boot 3.0 migration guide. If you haven't had a chance to go through this, please check this out. Whole bunch of really good information on if you're moving from 2.7 to 3, this is what you want to do. If you're not on 2.7 yet, and say you're on like 2.4, maybe don't jump from 2.4 to Java 17 and 3.0. Maybe jump to 7 and then you can follow this migration guide from 2.7 to 3.
Sean Noyes, welcome to the show. Justin, good to see you. I'm excited to hear how things are going for you, Justin.
Cool. All right. Yeah, I think that's it. I don't want to waste too much time on this because I want to get our friend in here and talk to him and see how he's doing. So let's do that now.
Yeah.
Let's bring him in.
Hello. Whoa. Wait a minute. No. I'm not the special guest. It's the guy right over here. This guy.
Oh, go get him.
Yeah, go get him. Bring him over.
No, it says right here.
See what it is, folks. You don't know. The special guest is somebody randomly chosen from the audience. So... Wait a minute. Why is everybody logging out?
Well, we have a Slack channel, and we pick a random person in the Slack channel, and Glenn won today.
Dang.
So
good to
Glenn,
see you, folks. Hello.
Good to see you. For our audience members who may not know you or what you're doing here, can you give us a little background on who you are and what you do?
Oh, sure. Folks, my name is Glenn. I've been working for Spring for going on about 10 years. I work on Spring Cloud Task, Spring Cloud Data Flow, Spring Batch, and when Oleg lets me, occasionally actually work on Spring Cloud Stream. So when I'm not doing that, I'm on the board of directors of Atlanta Java User Group, which means I'm on the board of directors of DevNexus as well. So, am the partner to my wife for 29 years and 2 kids. So, woo, awesome. There we go.
That's awesome. Yay. Cool. So speaking of DevNexus, I don't know if you should be the one I'm thanking, but I did get a little letter this week saying I have got accepted to DevNexus.
Both of y'all did. Isn't it great?
That's awesome.
Oh gosh, I've got Venkat, you folks, Cody, Spencer Gibb will be there.
I love Spencer.
Oh gosh, who else is coming?
Glenn will be there?
Who's that? Yeah, I'm actually there, I think. Jonathan Ivanov, he's going to be giving a presentation on metrics and observations, the new stuff for Micrometer.
Check that out.
I'm trying to think. There's like so many. We've got a Spring Cloud security talk coming in from one of our folks. It's going to be a really, really, really big year this year. So Whitney's coming. So
yes.
So it's going to be a good year.
This is just so I have my dates right too. This is going to be on April 4th.
through the 6th. Yep. 4th is a workshop day. The 5th and 6th are primary, like the main days. I think we're at $450 for a ticket, and
Nice.
so that's through February. So it's probably like the cheapest, large scale Java show out there, at least in the US.
I was just going to say that seems very affordable from the numbers that I've seen from other conferences. So
yeah, we are
that's great to hear.
actually nonprofit. It's hosted through the Atlanta Java Users Group. So
Awesome.
I was teasing DaShaun a little while ago that I was looking through my salary that I get from DevNexus, and it usually looks something like a jacket, a bag here. So it's just it's an act of love and of just for the community to share technology in Java and just to be a part of it. So, folks, if you're looking for a conference that's pretty reasonable, DevNexus is it. So
that's really great. How did you get involved in that to begin with?
So I was going to AJUG and I knew a gentleman named Gunnar Hillert, and Gunnar said, hey, I want to come to DevNexus. And I went for the first time, really loved it. And I said, hey, can I volunteer? And they went, yeah, volunteer.
Awesome.
And I volunteered a couple of years, and they went, would you like to join the board of directors? And I went, sure. And so that was, oh my gosh, that's been about 11 years ago now. So been a part of it for 11 years. Watched it grow from like 500 people to like the peak in 2020 of like over 2,500 people to come. And it's like I said, I think it's just we got great speakers that come in, they give great discussions, great talks. And like I said, the hardest part is when you get all these talks that came in when the call for papers, and you're like, wow, these are great talks. Which ones do you pick? Yeah. And so it's just awesome. So like I said, if y'all are looking for a reasonable conference to go to, it's in Atlanta, Georgia, April 4th through 6th. If you're looking for a workshop, Venkat's hosting one workshop and he'll be there. So go out to devnexus.com and take a look at the schedule. And if it's like what you like, hop on board, purchase a ticket.
That's great. I love that story too, because I mean, it's important advice for not only junior programmers, but really anybody in programming. One way that you could really help out is by getting involved in anything. And it may not lead to monetary rewards, right? But like just saying, hey, I want to volunteer, and maybe you work a desk one year, and then, hey, this is something I really like doing. And then you get more involved, and now you're on the board and you're going through CFPs. And this story I've heard resonate throughout the community, whether it's a conference or working on an open source project. Maybe you just start by helping out with some documentation, and then you get really involved, and now you're a main contributor on this project. So if you ever get a chance to like get involved in something you're interested in, take it. It may lead to like bigger and better things for your career. So
yeah, touch base with your local user groups. Your local Java user group is a fantastic place to get started and volunteer. I know they always need people to hop on.
For sure.
And I've done a couple of talks on getting started in open source. And, sometimes folks, the best way to get an open source involved is not only just to look for the tag of, go into go to the site and look at issues. A lot of times they'll have for first time contributors, right? Mm-hmm. Look for those tags. The other thing to do is just jump headlong in and say, read the docs. When you see a hiccup in a doc, submit a PR. Like I tell folks, I think it was the last talk I gave, I say it took me 3 hours to figure out what was going wrong with something, and it was actually a documentation error. So you don't think doc errors don't cause a problem. Wait till you burn 3 or 4 hours and you go, oh, the doc is wrong.
Yep.
And so please.
And even just to back it up one step, even just using that open source software, you may use it in a way that's nobody else has ever used it before, and help the team realize that, oh, I didn't think someone would actually use it like that.
Absolutely. Stretch the legs there on the project.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I'm excited for DevNexus. I've never been, so it's going to be my first time there. I'm excited to be there. Your first time too?
It'll be my first time.
All right.
Sweet. Welcome, folks.
Can't wait. I love the Atlanta area. So, well, except driving on those freeways.
Just hit Marta from the airport. Just get Marta from the airport. It's right off the line. And so y'all are in good shape. No driving required. So just hop on to Marta. 30 minutes later, you're there.
Awesome. Cool. All right. So what are we talking about today? What are we gonna discuss?
Well, I thought we would start today kind of talk about like a Spring Cloud Dataflow 101, but I want to do it as like a story.
I like it.
I like stories, especially this time of year. Get to share, like I tell folks, there's two types of storytellers out there. They're the great storytellers, and then there's me. But sometimes the story is what's important, and I think this story is a solid one on what Dataflow can do for you for orchestrating your streams and even orchestrating workflows for your batch applications.
That's awesome, because I think we talk about this all the time. There's so many projects in the Spring ecosystem, really just making awareness of what these projects are and what they do. Because if you've never heard of Spring Cloud Dataflow and you just saw the title, you go,
another Dataflow.
Here's what happens. And I've seen it many, many times from both the Spring advocate side and also from being in the field with VMware Tanzu, that organizations, teams, we've all done it at some point where, hey, we got this great idea to build a thing, only to find out later that, oh, it was already built, like that it already exists and it's supported over there. And I've seen it a lot. And this is an example of one of those things that I've seen homegrown out in the wild where, hey, did you know that Spring Cloud Dataflow does a lot of what you're doing and more?
Right.
So this getting awareness of the projects that are under the Spring Boot, Spring Cloud umbrellas, getting awareness is an important part of what we're trying to do.
Yep. Well, sweet. I appreciate y'all doing this. I've actually caught several of your shows, and I think the fun part about catching them is I listen to like the questions people ask, and sometimes I'll chime in on an answer really quick. It's like, oh, this, oh, I know what that is, or oh, I don't know what that is. That's a good question.
That's the nice thing. Also, is we are getting, the Spring team joins in. So when you're asking your questions in the chat, it's not just us. Right? There's others from the Spring team oftentimes in the chat, and they're going to be the ones that are answering your questions. So just a reminder, don't wait until the end. If you leave without your questions being asked, that's on you. I always say, if you eat dinner at our house and you don't eat, you go home hungry, that's your fault. Like, come, bring your questions, ask them. That's the way that this works. Ask your questions and put them in the chat, and we'll bring them up and we'll put them on screen so that we make sure to get back to it. If we don't get it in the show, we'll get back to it offline.
And when we say, if we don't know the answer to those questions, we'll go bug the people that do. Glenn is one of those people we bug.
Yes. We've been trying to get Glenn on the show. I think it was like after like episode 4 or 5. Like,
oh, really?
It's early. Yes. Yeah. And
well, we got Spring Cloud out this week.
Yeah, so we did a lot of cool things. It was a busy time.
It was a really busy year. Yeah. It was exciting this year. Native, micrometer updates, Jakarta. I mean, go. I think I talked about it last week. Go catch the keynote from Jürgen. I mean, from oh my gosh, watch it. It's like, folks, this is a big year. I mean, Java 17 baseline, and another year Java 21 baseline.
I thought he did such a great job of we all have heard the highlight features, but he really did a great job of breaking down each of those and what that meant to actually making it into Spring Framework 6 or Spring Boot 3. So exciting.
Oh, it is. It is a lot of stuff to play with. Folks, if you're looking for something spare time to do over the holidays, go out, build your web app. Go out, bring out your Spring Cloud Task app, build it, natively compile it, and have some fun. So
that's a great point. DaShaun, you were going to ask the audience. We need to find out something, right?
Yes. What we want to know is we want to hear from you what you're working on over the break. What are you interested in? We saw one that's just recently discovered Spring Cloud. What are you doing? What are you interested in? Let us know on Twitter or in the chat. hashtag spring office hours, because we want to keep track. This is the last episode of the year. And we'd like to, still have an idea what's going on when we come back after the holiday.
What are you working on over the break, DaShaun?
Thank you for asking. I'm working on MAS, the machines as a service setup for my Raspberry Pis, so that I can reconfigure Raspberry Pis.
Nice.
And then I have basically reference implementations of all the Spring projects that I'm working on that are going to be running on DaShaun.dev. So it'll run on Kubernetes, running on Raspberry Pis with Knative serving and Knative eventing, and we're going to connect the dots. So all of these things that I've done as parts, I'm going to try to pull it together over the holiday break so I can have something up and running.
Those are the most fun things to do, just to hack on stuff and get everything to work. So
yeah, we want to feel like, or I like to feel like I'm in the same seat. I'm running into the same problems. I love working on problems that the community has shared. I've got somebody that I met at SpringOne Tel Aviv, and they were running into an interesting problem that, it's one of those that should work, but it's tricky. So I'm enjoying working on these problems that I'm hearing from the community and contributing back.
Cool. Glenn, you got anything going on? You got any projects?
Yeah. So there's an experimental project from Spring that's called Spring Modulith. And I am beginning a deep dive on that myself.
Awesome.
Nice.
So
that definitely sounds interesting. I saw an abstract of it, and I saw a talk on it. So interested to see where that goes.
Yeah, it is really cool how they break up a project into modules and just the communication, the observations of them, creating that clean interface between the modules, and then not only that, just the documentation. I was like, what have you done, Ollie? This is good stuff. And so deep dive
for a long time. Like his talk, his approach has been around for a long time, and now it's actually become a part of under the Spring umbrella as a experimental.
Yes, it is awesome. So
I've loved it. So let's jump in. I'm bringing questions up on the screen just so we can circle back to them. Justin's doing something really cool. He's working on getting away from Drop Wizard and heading towards Spring Boot. Sometimes that's difficult, depending on your org. Sometimes there's gravity and baggage and stuff that goes along with it. So yeah, I'm excited to hear how that goes for him. Yes,
James, that sounds like a typo, James. I will talk to the Spring security team and get that updated. Thank you for letting me know. Obviously, that's Java 17.
17, yeah. I was like, wait a minute, 6? Oh, wait a minute, that's wrong.
And I'm also looking, there's another question on the Spring security reference docs as a single HTML page. I'm not finding it. That's what I was looking at over there to see if I could find a link for that.
I know we had an API doc issue too with Spring reference, Spring framework API doc. So cool. We appreciate that. Any of those things that come up, get them to us. We will get them to the appropriate people. So,
Glenn, we are going to hand it over to you.
Oh, wow.
Rock and roll.
Woo-hoo. Let's get started, folks.
All right.
And well, hello, everybody. I'm ready to get started here. Let me go to full screen mode here. There we go. So today, there we are. So today we're going to be covering orchestrating streams with a little bit of Spring Batch in there. It's a Spring Cloud data flow story, as we talked about. I love telling stories. Oh my gosh. So with that being said, let's see. Even my little remote works. This is going to be a good day. Yes. Or actually, it has been a great day. It's just going to get better. So our agenda today, we're going to be talking about taking a function, a Java 8 function, and making it into an event-based application. But any application in isolation is kind of boring when we think about event processing, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to take and create a Java function. We're going to make that function and put it in an app without writing any additional code, make that app an event processing app. Then we're going to use Spring Cloud Dataflow to orchestrate a solution and create a stream for that, which is going to utilize our app. Then what we're going to do is I get bored so easily. So what we're going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of some features to that stream and add to it. So we're going to kind of do a little mutation, not bad mutation like bad sci-fi movies, good mutation like good sci-fi movies, right? So with that being said, once we do that, we're going to be storing some data into a database. And then what I want to do from that point is actually use that data in a database and generate reports from an ephemeral application. If you want an application that starts, does something, and ends. Sounds strangely like a batch application, doesn't it? Well, with that being said, let's get started. Buzzword bingo, the tools for the day. All of our apps are going to be Spring Boot applications. The function that we're going to be using, we're going to it's going to be built with a Spring Boot, and we're going to be pulling in a Spring Cloud Stream dependency, and we're going to just see a little bit of code be transformed into, again, that event-based processing application. But when it's time for do our report, we're going to be using Spring Cloud Task and Spring Batch together so that we can have an application that can be deployed to a cloud, be a good citizen of the cloud, but give us that quick ephemeral app that starts, does its work, and ends. In this case, generate that report. And then we're going to be orchestrating all of this good stuff through Spring Cloud Data Flow. I must provide a definition for data flow, but we can think about it this way. Data flow allows us to orchestrate the creation of our streams and the deployment of our streams. It can even go in and update, apps don't stay stagnant. They change. So Spring Cloud Data Flow allows us to update and even roll back apps that are deployed in as a part of our streams. But then what we also can do through data flow is to create batch data pipelines where I can launch batch applications and run one. And then after it successfully completes, run the next and then the next. And even, hey, this one ended with this exit code or this status, call this batch app instead of this one. We could do that, run batch apps in parallel. So we create these workflows through data flow. We're going to even show you how just to create a simple one today. Orchestrating streams. When we talk about orchestrating streams, I can't talk today, we're going to have 5 primary steps. The first step is we're going to create the stream. We're going to design that stream definition. Then we're going to deploy that stream, and we can deploy it to Kubernetes, to Taz, or to my local machine. For simplicity today, we're just going to be deploying it to my local machine today. But then I want to mutate that stream. I want to add features to that stream. How can I do that using data flow and thinking a little bit with my enterprise integration patterns? Well, I might be able to use one of those patterns there. And then lastly, when we're done with our stream, let's undeploy it. My base stream today. So today we're going to be writing the name transformer, but then I have these 2 other apps. An HTTP app that's going to be receiving, if you will, a name, just sending in a name, and it's going to have a listener ready to catch that. It's going to in turn take that name and drop it onto a messaging framework, or what we can also call messaging middleware. A messaging middleware is basically a Kafka, a RabbitMQ, a Kinesis, a Google PubSub, or whatever favorite messaging framework that you like. In this case, we're going to have an HTTP app that's going to catch that name, and it's going to drop it onto, in my case, a RabbitMQ that I have running on my machine, and it's going to drop it onto an exchange. The name transformer is going to pick it up, and then it's going to transform it and basically, make a JSON representation of that name, and then drop it onto another exchange where we're going to have a log app pick that up. The cool part is that we're going to run and create a name transformer. The others we're going to run, the HTTP and log, actually come from another project. So write this down. It's called Spring Cloud Stream Applications. This is a project that has about 60 sub-projects in it, or maybe 50, somewhere around there, of various apps that you can use as a part of creating your stream. It has various sinks, processors, and sources. I actually got that backwards. A source is like our HTTP. A source app is what will go out and pull data from another system, pull data from a database, FTP, or in our case, receive data from an external system, in this case, HTTP. It will then take that data and drop it onto the messaging exchange, or the messaging framework. Well, that's what a source does. And the best way to think of that is a Java 8 function that is a oh my gosh, supplier. Thank you, supplier. But then we're going to want to have a processor. And a processor we could think of as a Java 8 function. And its job is to transform that data or to enrich that data or even route that data. And then once it does that, it puts it onto another, in our case, exchange or topic. And then we have a what we call a sink, which is we could think of as a Java 8 consumer. It picks up that data and takes action with that data. That action could be to write out data to a database, write data to a file system, send out an email, send out a message on Slack. So we have these three types: source, processor, sink. And when we go back to the Spring application project, Spring Cloud Stream applications, we can go in there and they have a bunch of sources available for us, a bunch of processors there available for us, and a bunch of sinks for us. And what we can do is we can take those subprojects down and build them and have that given application ready and available. Or I can pull those apps binaries directly from Maven Central, or pull the Docker image directly from Docker Hub. So in this case, we're going to write the name transformer, but I'm going to use the precompiled versions of these binaries for HTTP and log and pull them in from Maven Central because, again, Spring Cloud Stream applications made those available for me. The function, it's just basically this. It's going to take in a string and return a string. The function is going to first off just do a system.print.hello and just print that out. And then it's just going to kind of create a JSON representation of the name that we pass in. Something very simple, very easy. As a matter of fact, you're going to see me do a little bit of copy paste because when I do demos live, I always mess up. So I try to make it as easy as possible. So today I'll be doing some copy pasting. Don't tell my mom. So I think it's time for us to begin orchestration. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I want to create my first app, which is the name transformer. It's going to be a Maven app. I'm going to be building it off of boot 3. My group will be io.spring. My artifact will be name app. And it's going to be a jar. I'm going to use Java 17 as my baseline. And then I'm going to add my dependencies. The first dependency I'm going to add is my stream. And Spring Cloud Stream. The second is I need to tell Spring Cloud Stream what binders I'm going to use. And you're like, what's a binder? Well, a binder basically says, Spring Cloud Stream, I want you to hook into a RabbitMQ framework, right? So in this case, I'm going to be hooking into RabbitMQ. But if I wanted to, I could also go in and add like a Kafka, because Spring Cloud Stream says you may be taking data in from a Kafka and outputting it to a Rabbit. So I would go in and add that as a dependency, right? But today, we're going to be reading directly from a RabbitMQ exchange and writing out to a RabbitMQ exchange. So I'm just including this one today. I'm going to go ahead and generate my app. I am now going to go ahead and unzip my app. I'm going to go to IntelliJ. I am going to open my app here. Let's see. There we are. I'm going to open that up. And I'm going to go ahead and go full screen on here. And while it's getting set up for the world, I am going to do a couple things. I'm going to zoom in on a couple of key points. One, we see that we included the binder Rabbit. So that piece we know about, and then the Spring Cloud Stream. Now, if you're following me today, and at least for the next couple of days, you may see this dreaded message. Oh my gosh, failed to transfer this little bit right here. Well, what we have is a little hiccup, and the Spring initializer team will be updating this as soon as they get back online. And what has happened is we no longer need this dependency right here, and that is to include that test binder like that. So what we're going to do is do this. We're going to get rid of this and see if I get this right the first time. And we're going to say test binder. So this was a hiccup that was reported today. and we hit refresh, and we see now we're green. So just when you pull it down and you're playing with it for the next couple of days, remember to replace that one bit with Spring Cloud Stream Test Binder. Okay, now it is time to copy paste. Yes, don't tell my mom. Y'all, I think I heard silent confirmations that y'all will not tell my mom I did this. All right, here we go. We're going to do a Control C, go back here. We're going to zoom out on that just a little bit. There we go. All right, first off, yes, I want to import the bean class. Yes, I want to include the function class. There we go. So we're done all of our imports. Our app is ready. That's all the coding we had to do. Excellent, a little bit dependency update. Shh, that's a little those things happen. But this is all the code we had to write. It's my function. We're done. Now, what will Spring Cloud Stream do for me? Now, out of the box, Spring Cloud Stream says, look, out of the box, what I will do is I will go ahead and create those exchanges for you. And I will use the name me as a default portion of the name. Let's see what that looks like. We're going to go ahead and run our app. It goes off, does its magic, and we will go to our RabbitMQ. I was supposed to show you this to you before. Oh, crud, I forgot. Well, before we just had the default AMQPs here, right? But now we see that it added the name me. That's the name of our function. It created an exchange for inputting data in and an exchange for the output. So this is where we're going to be sending the data parameter in. The results will always send out to this name me.out. But let's test it. So I'm going to go to the name me in, select that. We're going to go to a published message. We're going to put that right there, and we're going to say DaShaun. I spelled it, DaShaun. There we go. And we're going to publish that message. And we see that, yes, we actually did receive the message. The app is working. But we're saying, well, Glenn, whoop, hold on. Creation of exchanges or topics is a protected resource in our company. We just can't create those on the fly. Spring Cloud Stream respects that, and it says, look, you can set an option that says, do not create these by default, right? But you're like, Glenn, we really don't name things. Name, the name of the function -n-0. Well, let's change that to something that maybe makes me feel a little bit better on how I can get my data into my function and get the data out of my function. So what we're going to do is we're going to change and give a soft reference to this name and for the input or the inbound into my function, something that's more meaningful to me. So we're going to go to Spring. Let me zoom in on that. Spring Cloud Stream function.bindings. And I want to now give it a softer name, or if you will, a logic name for it. In this case, we're going to call it, again, name me-n-0. Whoop, that's right, that's 0 equals, and then we're going to say input, something basic. Now, I'm going to do the same thing here for my name me-out-0-out equals output. Now, if I rerun my app, let it go do all that good stuff, and we're going to go back here. We'll just go back to our exchanges, and we'll see that we have an input and an output. Now what I can do with that input and output, I can set destinations, set the properties, do all sorts of cool stuff with that. With something that's a little bit more meaningful than name me-n0, it's going to be just input and output. Now, we're going to stop this app. Now we're going to build it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something a little different, and it's just for education purposes. I'm going to build the app, and I'm going to make sure the app is actually put into my local Maven repository. And we'll talk about that, why I did it that way right now. Let's go to Spring Cloud Dataflow. Finally, we get the data flow, right? So Spring Cloud Dataflow says, look, I will be able to, we'll allow you to orchestrate your streams with various applications, and we can also create the batch workflows with all your various batch apps. But I need for you to tell me where those apps are. So I want you to register those apps and tell me where they're at. So right now, Dataflow is able to, you can actually register apps that are in a Maven repository on your file system via HTTP, or even via, if you have a Docker container, it can actually specify the Docker container. Right now, I'm going to go pull this from my local Maven repository. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to give a name for my newly created app, and I'm calling it name transformer. It is a function which is going to begin take input in, do some work with it, and then return it. So it's going to be a processor. And then I'm going to tell it where to go. I'm going to zoom in on that so you can see a little bit better. Maven : //io.spring : name app. Looks like I may have done this before, folks. Cheating. So, well, I always practice, right? So in this case, Maven io.spring name app.0.01 snapshot. Okay, so we're going to import that app. And if I go in and say, just show me the processors, and we scroll down, there's my new app. I've registered it. Now, I have already pre-registered all the apps that are available in the Spring Cloud Stream Applications project. And that's the reason why you see all the good stuff here, including the, what did we put with it? Oh, that's processors. That's right. Glenn, wake up. My goodness. Go to source, and we can see that it has HTTP. All right, we'll go back to filter on processors. Now, we're going to create a stream, folks. I'm so excited. This is cool stuff. All right, so here
Glenn,
we go.
just 1 second before you get into a stream.
Yeah.
So Spring Cloud Dataflow, this is running localhost 9393.
That's correct.
I've never used this. So this is a project that you run locally then?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for asking that question. Great question. So let's go ahead and stop. Now I'm going to go here and say, Glenn canned it. So there's a project out there called Spring Cloud Dataflow. You can pull that project down and build it. And we also, I believe, have it also available as a binary, but you can take the Spring Cloud Dataflow project down and build it. And it's just basically a Maven clean package. There's instructions on building it, various and some of the tweaks you can do. The documentation is really cool. You can go to dataflow.spring.io right here. And look at that. And then you could go to documentation, installation, and have some fun. And today we're using just the manual install, where I just did a wget. I pulled it down.
Ooh, there's a Docker compose, my favorite.
Yes, and we're updating all this good stuff. So there you go. But
perfect.
So right now I'm going to go ahead and kick that back off. So I'm kicking it off, and the only thing that I have right now is that Dataflow needs a database to hook into to be able to store all these good definitions. So I have a data source that's hooking into a MariaDB that I have, and it basically auto configures it, and we're just kicking off from there. Thank you for asking that question.
Perfect. No problem. Thank you.
No, thank you. No, thank you. Oh my gosh, we got to go to the police folk, not police, but the polite folks. You know, how polite can we be? Yes, Glenn can be super polite. So back to this. Great questions, folks. Thank you. Keep on asking. I can't see anything, but I will afterward. But if you ask them all a lot, they'll break in and say, Glenn, you missed a very important part here. So in this case, I'm doing a drag and drop. And I can go here, and I am doing drag and drop here, where I have my HTTP connected to the name transformer and hook it to the log. And we've created a definition. Also notice as I did this, it was updating a DSL. So I can actually go in and create a DSL, which will, and I'll show this in a second, which will also update this diagram. I can go to options, and I want, for my server from HTTP, I want to listen on port 9900. Update. Now we're going to create the stream definition. Now I'm not deploying this to the real world. I'm just declaring a definition, and we're going to call it name stream. Seems like I might have done this before. Let's see. There we go. And there we go. And now I have a stream definition. It is not available, but now I want to deploy it to my local machine. Oh, there we go. Deploy. And right now, at this time, I could actually, at deployment time, set properties, but I actually set the ones at definition time. So I'm just going to go straight for deploy right here. Okay, it's going to deploy that stream out to the real world. And it says it's successful, and we see that it's deploying the stream. I can hit refresh, and we see now that it is successfully deployed. I can go select runtime and actually view the state of each of the apps in that stream. I'm now going to click view some data, or sorry, get some view, or get a view of some of the setup for this one. It's deployed to my local machine. You can get your port. You can also get the standard air, standard out, the URL for that project or for that given application. In this case, I am just going to capture the standard out file that's writing out to. And if you're on Kubernetes, it would actually give you some of that pod information. So it's very specific on what it returns based on what you need. So we're going to go back to here, and we're going to do a tail-f. And we see that that app is running. Now I'm going to go in and send a curl command that's just going to send a text plane of DaShaun to port 9900. And we see that it made it all the way through and then took that data and wrote it out as what? A JSON. Repeat that and do a Dan. And there we go. Now, folks, I'm getting bored. I want to do something more with this data. So I want to change the behavior just a little bit. I want to take this data and store it into a table named names. So ingenuitive of me. And have a column in there named name. Okay, I'm not that original, but we try. So how can I do that? So let's go back to our streams, and we see that we have our stream here. We can even break it down, get a little image of that. And we see that we have our stream. We see it's deployed, it's rocking. But now what I want to do is I want to get a copy of that data right after the name transformer and sent to another stream without affecting this original flow. Now, if I look in, I think about the enterprise integration patterns, there's one called a wiretap. And a wiretap says, look, drop in get a copy of a message and without affecting the original flow and send it to another stream. Let's see if we can do that. So I'm going to create another stream and I'm going to call it name, well, in this case, I will name it later, but I want to tap name stream. And let me put the right indicator there. But I want to tap it not after the source, but right after that processor, which was called name transformer. And now what I want to do is I want to send this data out to yet one of the other Spring Cloud Stream applications. And this one we want to hook into is one that's called JDBC, which will actually take and store this data onto into a table on JDBC, in a JDBC database. So what was that look like? But notice I didn't do a drag and drop. What did I do? I just typed it up here and it auto added it. So I'm going to create the stream and I'm going to call it DB stream. I know, highly original. And we see now that we have our name stream going, it's deployed, and then we have the DB stream, it's undeployed. So what I can do now is I want to deploy it, but I forgot a couple of things. I forgot to tell it what database I'm using, what tables I want to update, all that stuff. Well, I could put it in a definition, but sometimes you don't want to store passwords into a definition. You rather do that at what? Deployment time via the environment properties, right? So we're going to do that right now. I'm going to go to my JDBC, and my browser already entered this stuff for me. I shouldn't have said yes, but now it knows it. So shame on Glenn for doing it earlier. But I still have a couple of things here I can add. And we're going to go here. And I'm going to tell it the driver I want to add. And then finally, the URL to the database that I want to update. And that's right here. Now I have told it where I want to put the data. Now I want to go back in and tell it two more things. What table name do I want to insert to? Names, column name. I'm going to update, and now I'm going to deploy this app to my local machine. Again, we see that it's deploying. And we hit refresh, still deploying, and now it's deployed. Let's go here and hit refresh on my handy dandy database visual tool here. And we see we have the table names. It is empty. But now if I go in and I say, send in Dan, send in DaShaun, we see that that data is still flowing up here. But now what? It's also inserting into the table. So we can actually go in and change how our streams behave by adding more apps to, or be able to take and tap off of that and add add new features to our streams as an existing stream lives. And we can also change the dynamic by adding and removing new streams from this base stream. It's pretty cool what you can do. But I'm bored again. I want to change the behavior of my app, right? I want to go into my function. Let's go back to here. And I want to do something a little different here. I want to change what I output from here. Well, before I do that, I want to create a new version of my application. And we're going to change this to 0.0.2. And I'm going to change it here where I will say hello space for that name. Now, what I'm going to do is build the app. Once again, at this time, it's going to create a 0.002 version of that application. So as that's building, how do I tell data flow? I've got a 0.002 version of that app. So let's go back to the add apps. We're going to just filter this so we can see the good stuff a little bit faster. And we're going to register another app, but strangely, it's going to be the same name. It's going to be a processor. The Maven is going to be the same, except what? I changed the version. Now, when I import that app, we'll see that the name transformer has 2 by it. That means that I can go in and I can either set defaults to using the original 001 or 002, and I can make that a default. But right now, I'm just going to leave that alone. But what I want to do is go back to my streams app here, and for my name stream, I want to update it so that it will use the 0.02 version. We'll update that stream. Now we see that it's deploying. And what's happening now is Spring Cloud Dataflow is bringing up the new version of the app. And when it says that that app is green, it's going to redirect traffic to what? To that new application. Or that new version, I should say. So we see that now it's deployed. Now when I send in DaShaun and Dan, there we go. We see hello Sean, hello Dan. We go back here and then we do a refresh and we see that in the database. Now, I messed up. I shouldn't put hello there. Well, let's get rid of it. So how can we do that? Let's go back to NameStream. Let's select update again. Now I want to roll back. I want to go back to the original version. I'm going to update the stream, and it's doing that same process again. It's bringing up the .001 version, and when it's ready, it transfers the traffic to it. And now when we go back to here, we'll send Dan and DaShaun, and we're back to our original version. And we could go here and hit refresh, and we see that now we have 6 entries. So the cool part about what we just saw is I have the ability to add new features to my stream by just creating tabs. I can change and update the elements in my app by updating the versions, removing versions. But also, at some time, I may not want to have my store to the database. Maybe I just want to keep writing it out to console. I can undeploy that app without, again, affecting the original. And we can see that we now have 8 entries here. But if we go to the database, what? We only have 6. And that's because I can change that behavior of how that stream behaves by adding and removing streams on that tap off of the original. Now, I have taken and I've got data in the database, but I want to do something with that database. I want to create that report. How can I do that? But there's a couple of rules I have. I want to write an app without having to do all the boilerplate, having to write all the code that reads the data from the database, write all that data, write all the code that takes to write it out to the flat file. I really just want to focus on just the processing bit. I want to remove that hello part that I have for some of that data when I write out the report. But also I want to have supported transactions through configuration, because I don't want to have to write that. I want to do that through configuration. And I want to add the ability whenever I want to, that if the app runs and it fails halfway through, I want to have to be able to easily add the ability to say, I want to restart at this location. How can I do that? Well, I think there's a project out there called Spring Batch that makes my life a lot easier. The good news, folks, is that I've already got an app available out there that can do that for us. And I'm going to zoom in here. There we go. And the first thing I want to do, this is a Spring Batch application. Let's zoom in a little bit right here. We're seeing that we have our Spring Boot Starter batch. I'm also pulling in the task. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. And we can see that it is just a regular Spring Boot app. Now, the one thing I will say is that Spring Cloud Dataflow currently is the 2.10. And while it did support the Boot 3 for Spring Cloud Stream apps, it still has to only support only supports 2.7 boot apps for the batch side. We are working on that, but for right now, it only supports Boot 2.7 when launching batch applications. All right.
Quick question, Glenn. For just those who may not know, Spring Batch.
Yes.
What would I reach for this project for? What is a high-level overview of what I might use Spring Batch for?
Oh, thank you for asking. That is a marvelous question. So imagine that we wrote, the first portion of what we had was basically a stream event processor. We were handling events, right? And as these events flow through the system, we want to handle that data at that time. But sometimes we want to handle data at a specific point in time. And what we want to do is to be able to bring up an app, it to do the work, and then terminate. There are certain business cases where this is particularly valuable, especially when like we're generating bill runs, again, billing reports. I've seen even people use it for manufacturing, where they say we want to go ahead and begin a run of creating what we call silicon wafers, and we want to just start the process and then run that process for X number of hours or particular units and then terminate. So the advantage is that your app starts, does the work, and then terminates. So I can reduce my cost by not having an app that's always running, just waiting for that trigger to kick it off. Oftentimes, these are apps that are scheduled so that you can have it scheduled based on a specific time, or even scheduled to run at based on a specific event. Spring Batch offers us the ability to be able to simply create these types of ephemeral apps to do that reading of data in, the processing of that data, and then writing those results out, and then terminating, but giving you a history of what was actually done. And we'll demo that. Dan, does that answer your question?
Yeah, for sure. And then the batch is like, hey, I have to do a whole bunch of things, right? Like if I just had to take in one thing, I would use maybe like a serverless function for that case. But in this case, it's a batch. Like I am processing a lot of things at one time.
That's correct. In our example, we're using just a very small data set of 6,
right.
but
it can scale up.
That's exactly it. I've seen people process literally millions of records through batch.
Cool.
Right.
Thanks, Len.
No, thank you for asking. People, keep the questions coming. I appreciate it so much. Okay. And sometimes I get talked so fast and it's just like, what's he talking about? And so thank you for giving me a chance to pause and explain. So thank you folks so much. Well, let's go back and talk about what batch can do. In this case, I want to have an app that reads the data, processes the data, and then writes the data out. And for that, I need what we call an item reader, an item processor, and an item writer. So I will create a bean for a reader, and it's going to read data from my database. In this case, we're going to be reading from the names table as we've been showing. And we want, as we read it, we want to also send that data to an item processor. The item processor in this case is going to, is a little bit of code I wrote, and it's just going to remove hello if it happens to be there. Else the data just goes straight through as is. But then I want to have a writer. But again, I don't want to have to write all that code out there. Spring Batch provides us a flat file item writer builder. And in this case, I hard coded this location of the report, but you can set that via property. And then I can say, what encoding do I want? Delete if it's empty, force a sync on it, delete if empty, all this good stuff, right? And then I can say, what kind of aggregator do I want? Do I want the data to be pipe delimited, CSV delimited, space delimited, all that good stuff. So I can do all that through configuration. I don't have to write all that out. But then once I specify my writer, my processor, and my reader, then I create a step. And my step says, look, I want you to read these in five chunk segments. And as we read through the 5 chunk segments, I want you to do a commit. So we already have this built-in transactions that you have available to you. And you can even change up the transactions, the ways at which it does transaction, again, through configuration. But then what we're doing is that is a step. And from a step, what we have, the overall controller is what we call a job. A job will launch and run the steps. In this case, we have a single step. So it says what I'm going to do is just run that one step. But from Spring Batch, I can have multiple steps, each step having reader, writer, processors, but as well as also can run tasklets. And then what will happen is I can say start on a step, dot next, the next step, then the next step. And if a specific step returns a certain value, I can say run step A or run step B based on the condition. I can also make them parallel. I can do I can run steps in remotely. So there's a lot of value that Spring Batch brings to us to simplify this type of batch processing. Many cases, people, when they're moving data off of a mainframe or apps off of a mainframe, may use Spring Batch to be a replacement for that, right? So as they move them off the mainframe, they'll write a Spring Batch app to implement that behavior. But now we are ready to run this app. Actually, we're not going to run it there. We want to build it. So as it's, again, I'm just putting it into my Maven repository. And so what we're going to do is I need to tell Dataflow about it. So we're going to zoom back in and we're going to switch what we're going to view to tasks. We don't have any yet, but we will. And we'll register one more app right here. And we're going to call this name report. Seems like I've done this before. This time it is a task. And again, it's Maven. We're going to tell it where to go. ido.spring. In this case, again, it's in my local repository. And it's name report. We're going to import that. And now I have my task definition. And now what I want to be able to do is create the task definition. Now what I can do is I can drag and drop the name report. And I can connect it. If I can get this right. Let's see. There we go. But let me show you this one. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll go for the simple case first. If we have time, we'll discuss. But what I could do is also put other apps. I can register other apps and actually build a flow of apps to launch. So I'm going to use this as an example. What if I wanted to run 2 name reports? One, run it once and then run it again. Maybe separate it with at deployment time or launch time with different properties. Maybe I want to handle the data in different ways. I could certainly do that. And it would, in this case, what we see is it would run name report and then next run the next name report. In this case, we're just going to run it once. But you could set up workflows like that. In this case, we're just running a single name report. And we'll call it name report instance. And what we're going to do is launch it. And it's going to go off and hit the database. And from here, what we can do from Dataflow, let me zoom out just a little bit. There we go. It's already run and complete. Spring Cloud Task basically tells the application to record valuable information about that given application, such as start time, the end time, the application properties, of course, with appropriate redaction, and be able to store all that data, the arguments that went in. But the other thing that we also see stored is details about the batch job itself. I can go in and remember it was a single step batch job. I can go in and view information about that batch job, how it ran. It had 2 commits. Remember, I was chunking at 5. I read, I read 7 records. Or no, sorry, I read 6 records, 6 writes, and I could see my commit count. I could capture all this information and even go here and view the log and see what was the status, how is it behaving, what was going on with that given batch application. So the cool thing here is if for those folks that have used Spring Batch in the past and they used what we call the Spring Batch admin, you'll notice that it is no longer supported. It's because Spring Cloud Dataflow is the replacement for the Spring Batch administrator. Well, folks, the one thing that we're going to do before we leave is I want to clean up a little bit. Is the other thing that we can do is when we're finally done, we can undeploy all our streams. Remember, the task is already run and completed. That batch job, it's already done. I don't have to stop it. And then I can, at any time, destroy that definition. There we go. So, folks, I want to thank you for spending this little bit of time with me. And I appreciate it.
That was awesome. DaShaun, you're on mute.
We have lots of good questions. So let's do this.
Okay.
Yes. So first of all, James Hayes asked, does this work with Cloud Foundry? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. It is very, very popular on Cloud Foundry. Answer that. Aaron Gershman, thanks again for joining. I'm a big fan. Aaron, also one of the Cloud Foundry experts. Yeah, hands down. Naga, I hope I'm saying the name right. BJ, where can we see HTTP and log? Can we make a source place a payload into two or more exchanges in parallel? So first of all, HTTP and log, those are the examples of the applications. I posted the link. There's dozens more there. But can we make a source, put a payload into 2 or more exchanges in parallel?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, it could be supported that way. I forgot the name of the pattern, but that is doable. And because the default behavior is if I tell it to go to 2 different exchanges, it's going to round robin. You could set the policy to send it to both. Okay.
Policy. Awesome.
Oh, that's through properties at the deployment time.
All right. Mohammed, does Streams support Apache Camel enterprise integration patterns or equivalent? I'm going to answer. I'm going to say my default thought was because I have a Apache Camel for Spring Cloud Stream, I can connect it in.
In this case, Spring Cloud Stream does it. Apache Camel. Well, Spring Cloud Stream is built on Spring integration.
Yep. So
any type of enterprise integration pattern you can think of, Spring is basically, think about it this way. So Spring integration is an implementation of the enterprise integration patterns, right? So it is like Camel in that way. And when we look at it this way, Spring Cloud Stream is built on Spring integration. Therefore, most of the patterns that you can see on enterprise integration patterns, Stream has got you. You're in good shape. Routing, scatter, gather, all that good stuff. Filtering. Yep.
James had a follow-up question. How does the add app work? I think we showed it a bunch of times, but he also asked, does it require Docker? You showed you were just doing a Maven clean install and you're putting in your library and you could include it.
Yes.
One of those patterns that we've seen in Cloud Foundry and Kubernetes is you can take that task, sake, source, whatever. You can take those things and make them Docker containers. Right?
Absolutely. Yes.
And then we can, just add Docker containers as part of our flow.
Yep. As a matter of fact, when we deploy to Kubernetes, the Docker is the preferred container. Well, not preferred, but is one of the containers that it supports. And Dataflow deploys those Docker containers to Kubernetes. You just tell Dataflow, I want to use Kubernetes.
So let's jump to the next question. How does this scale out?
Okay. What do you mean by scale out?
Right. So, my limited experience on here is when we have those large batch applications, we were able to configure Spring Cloud Dataflow to say, hey, I want X number of instances. Here's how I'm going to grab this many instances or this many items off of the stream per instance of this Docker image, for example.
Yes, you can horizontally scale via properties. You could tell it through a deployer property how many of particular instance of an app that you want. So I could say I want 5, a classic scenario. So the source is fast, the consumer is fast, sorry, the source is fast and the sink is fast, but the processor is slow. I can say, deploy 1, 5, 1.
Yep.
1 source, 5 processors, 1 sink.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
I think that was all of Mohammed's questions. Another name, hard to pronounce, Evgeny Kopeyev. Does it work with reactive functions, Kotlin coroutines? What about back pressure?
In that case, with the app, basically, since yes, you can write reactive-based functions for Spring Cloud Stream supports reactive-based functions. So any of that features that you get from the Spring, so the thing to remember is that Spring Cloud Stream is built on 2 different things. I said Spring integration, it's true, but also Spring Cloud Function.
Yeah.
So anything you can do through Spring Cloud Function, Stream supports.
And remember, Spring Cloud Function basically works with 3 function types: function, supplier, consumer, which you could basically do anything with those 3 types. So
yep.
And Andre, question: could I create a decision flow on a task as well?
Yeah. Well, in a task, as we talked about, like if you're talking about from like, are you talking about how we do the applications? Yes, you can. I did a very simple flow where it was very linear, just where I dropped the same app twice. You can say based on the exit code or based on the status of the batch or task, you can create a conditional flow on that. Yes.
So to kind of share an example, from the past.
Oh, absolutely. So let's say this. So when we think about a task application, we're thinking about ephemeral app. And you can think of, if you're in the Kubernetes world, you can think of it as a job, right? So let's say that I have task A runs, and it returns it can return a 0, 1, or 2, right? As an exit code. What you can do is at that time, you can set it up where it says if exit code, you can, as you draw it out, what you're going to do is you're going to draw 1 app, then you put like your other 2 apps there. Let's say task B and task C, and it says if it returns 0, run task B. If it returns 1 or 2, run task C, right? And then end, right? So that way you could create that flow. Again, you can also say, I want to run task A, but I want to run task after task A is done. I want to run task B, C, D, E, and F in parallel. End. And then you can create, I've seen people create some very, very, you were talking about earlier, like, Glenn, what was your test case? I put 50 apps in there. And then someone said, well, I'm doing about 150. And I went, wow, that's great. Yep. And it was a question of they wanted to do a particular flow. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. I hadn't saw that before. And so again, what did we do? We added a feature to support what he was doing at the time. But that was, again, yeah, go for it.
Awesome. It's a great project. I've had a lot of great experience with it in the past. The story on my side was, they were at that point where they were deploying this application across a bunch of VMs, and their experience for support was, let's log into the boxes and look at the logs from all of those VMs, right, at scale, dozens. And we used Spring Cloud Dataflow to pull the logs into a central spot, dedupe, and have a central location where they can see the logs from all of their.
And I think the good thing is when you look at a problem, I want folks to think about it's like, when you look at it's like, what is the best solution to what we're trying to solve? In many cases, we're now moving more to an event-based structured world where we want to handle the data at that moment. But then what we also do, we've seen where people go in and they create these basic flows. And they're like, I wish we'd done this, 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 and this. So you want to be able to add those, like you saw, where you're really tapping off and you're creating these new flows that gives you those new features as you discover them without affecting that original flow. And that is the goal. But then again, you also have those things. That's great. I've got, we need to run a report that's going to head off 1 million or 2 million or 500 million records. I need to read them in, do this processing, and generate this type of result. It could be even, we're sending out all the emails tonight so let's go through and read all these records from a database. Let's send these emails out to all of our employees or whomever, our customers. And, maybe it could be their stock reports, right? Perfect batch implementation. Let's kick it off and let's do it, right?
Yeah. One of the things you said just a second ago was like the logs, event streams. Like for me, one of those things that kind of stuck is like logs are event streams. Like there's so much that you can do just with logs and handling logs properly. So yeah.
Beautifully. Yes.
This is good stuff.
Well,
we ran over a little bit. We had a couple of questions. No, like this is good stuff. It was good questions all the way across. This is a very good session. I know that I'm going to be reviewing it. And I think what I want to do is I want to turn this into something on our Tanzu Developer Center of like how to go through this exact same setup, how to set it up on your laptop, using the Docker images, using the Docker Compose examples, and just walk through the same example because it's a powerful tool. I'm super excited about the latest release. And thank you so much for the presentation.
Well, folks, thank you for inviting me. And folks, it was just a pleasure to be here for our community. Keep in touch, open issues, ask questions on Stack Overflow, reach out to office hours, and look for us at the conferences. We're excited to see y'all.
Specifically DevNexus.
Yeah, well, maybe that one too. Oh, but let's not forget what happens. We have Spring 1 Essentials coming up too.
Yeah, that's right around the corner.
First, right?
Right around the corner.
Oh my gosh! And so I think I see somebody that might be keynoting. I'm trying to.
Yeah.
Who's that? Yeah.
Oh,
This person right here. This person right there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yes. Good stuff.
Glenn, thank you for joining us. Thanks everyone for being here again for our last episode of the year. Thanks everyone for kind of welcoming us this year on Office Hours. We've had a lot of fun doing this. It will not stop. We have big plans for the next year. So we're looking forward to that. Looking forward to all the things we can do with this program here. So with that, we'll leave you. We'll say happy holidays. And Happy New Year to all of you. And we'll see you in the next year. Happy coding, friends.
Take care, folks.